Lieutenant Colonel Harris signaled the team to prepare for extraction, every movement calculated and precise, the SEALs gathering the captured intelligence and supplies into secure packs while remaining alert to threats from every angle. The valley. Outside the warehouse stretched like a gauntlet twisted metal, and debris scattered across the scorched terrain, each shadow potentially hiding enemy combatants. The A-10 roared overhead engines, screaming a thunderous shield, forcing the enemy into retreat. Yet the team knew that leaving the warehouse would expose them to concentrated fire. Each second was a delicate negotiation between speed and stealth, every heartbeat a measure of risk. Harris led the team out of the warehouse, moving low and fast across the debris-littered ground, coordinating every step with the strafing runs of the aircraft. Above, sparks flew from stressed metal panels above as the A-10 unleashed rounds into the open positions where the enemy attempted to regroup. Debris and dust raining down, forcing split-second adjustments. The SEALs moved in tight formation, their rifles at the ready eyes scanning every shadow, every jagged piece of rubble. Each corner cleared revealed potential ambush points the enemy. Desperate and calculating, trying to trap them between their fire and the treacherous terrain, Harris signaled for suppressive fire while using the explosions and debris from the overhead attack as cover, timing every movement to the roar of engines. Above, the extraction route was narrow, winding between collapsed walls and jagged rocks, every misstep a potential disaster. Sparks and smoke rose from damaged structures, and the ground trembled from repeated strafing runs, the acrid smell of burnt fuel and scorched metal filling the air. The co-pilot of the A-10 whispered over comms updates on enemy movement, while Harris adjusted course, signaling the team forward inch by inch. Each step was a balance between survival and speed. Every vibration, from the aircraft above, a reminder of both protection and danger. The enemy launched a sudden counterattack from a hidden ridge, firing sporadically, forcing the SEALs to dive behind cover and return fire coordinated with strafing runs above, the shockwaves rattling loose debris around them. Each second stretched endlessly, bullets ricocheting off metal and stone, sparks flying from impacted debris. The team advancing cautiously yet relentlessly. Harris led the team through a particularly narrow corridor of rubble, timing each movement with the suppression from above, the roar of engines providing both shield and warning as the aircraft unleashed another devastating pass. The SEALs moved like shadows across the ruined valley, using every fragment of cover to conceal movement, advancing inch by inch with their eyes fixed on the distant extraction point. Smoke and dust, blurred vision forcing reliance on training instinct and heightened awareness of sound and motion. Every shadow could conceal a sniper, every shifting beam a trap. Sparks flew from stressed metal structures, debris falling unpredictably. Bullets tearing through the air, forcing micro-adjustments. Harris signaled for a coordinated push, timing it precisely with another strafing pass of the A-10 overhead engines, screaming, unleashing destruction into enemy lines, yet scattering debris dangerously close to the team. The terrain grew increasingly treacherous, twisted metal and shattered vehicles creating obstacles that had to be navigated while maintaining speed and cover fire. The SEALs moved in perfect coordination, each step deliberate, each glance conveying intent and action. Harris calculated every movement, timing every breath, every heartbeat. With the chaotic rhythm of the battle above, the enemy attempted a last desperate ambush from hidden ruins. Yet the combined suppressive fire of the team and the relentless strafing of the A-10 neutralized the threat before it could fully form. Sparks and smoke rose from both damaged structures and debris from the aerial attack. The smell of burnt fuel and scorched metal thick in the air, the valley alive with noise and chaos. Each movement a calculated risk, every second a battle against exhaustion, fear, and unpredictable danger. Harris led the final push toward the extraction point, the glow of lights in the distance signaling hope, yet each step remained fraught with peril. The enemy still scattered in pockets across the terrain. every heartbeat. A measure of courage and skill. Every vibration from the aircraft, every shudder of debris, every distant explosion was a reminder that the battle was not yet won, yet inch by inch, step by step, the team pressed forward, relying on training instinct, and the relentless support of the A-10 above the general may have said it was over, yet the roar of engines and the chaos below proved that survival and success were still possible if they could navigate the final stretch through the valley alive. And intact Lieutenant Colonel Harris led the SEALs across the shattered valley, every muscle tense, every nerve alive, the glow of the distant extraction point cutting through the smoke and haze ahead. Sparks and debris still fell from damaged structures, as the A-10 roared overhead engines, screaming a relentless thunder that kept the enemy suppressed, yet reminded the team that danger remained with every step. The ground trembled beneath the roar of the aircraft, each vibration a reminder that the fragile balance between survival and disaster could shift at any second. Harris signaled for coordinated movement, each member of the team responding with precise gestures and disciplined speed. The enemy fired sporadically from hidden positions, twisted metal and ruined vehicles providing both cover and deadly traps, every shadow a potential threat. Every second stretched endlessly bullets, ricocheting sparks flying from debris, the smell of smoke and burnt fuel thick in the air. The team pressed forward inch by inch, timing every movement with the strafing runs above. The A-10 banked low, unleashing a devastating barrage engines, screaming its guns, spitting fire and smoke into enemy positions, forcing combatants into retreat and chaos. While above the roar and thunder of the aircraft provided a shield below, the SEALs navigated a gauntlet of rubble and gunfire. Each movement was coordinated, every glance a communication, every step a calculation. Harris led the team across a particularly exposed stretch of debris-littered ground, timing their advance with the explosions above as bullets tore through the air. Sparks flew from metal and concrete, fragments ricocheted dangerously close, forcing instantaneous adjustments. The extraction point grew closer, a glowing beacon in the shattered valley. Yet each step remained a perilous negotiation with terrain enemy and the unstable structures around them. The enemy launched a desperate counterattack from a hidden ridge, firing with intensity, trying to pin the team down. Harris signaled a coordinated suppressive volley, while the A-10 swooped low above, unleashing rounds that tore through cover and scattered combatants. Yet debris and dust rained down, forcing careful movement. Sparks and smoke curled faintly from stressed metal debris, shifted unpredictably, forcing micro-adjustments each step, a test of skill and nerve. The SEALs advanced like shadows, moving from cover to cover, timing each movement with the chaos above every heartbeat. A reminder that the margin for error was razor-thin. Harris directed fire while advancing inch by inch towards the extraction point. The terrain became increasingly treacherous, twisted metal, jagged concrete, and fallen beams threatening to slow their progress. Yet the team pressed on, relying on training, coordination, and instinct. Each vibration from the aircraft above, every explosion, every shudder of debris reminded them that they were not yet safe. Yet the final stretch was within reach. Sparks flew from stressed structures, bullets ricocheted, smoke thick in the air, the acrid tang of burnt fuel and metal stinging their nostrils. Each moment required absolute focus, every second a gamble against chaos and enemy intent. The A-10 made another low pass, engines screaming its guns, a relentless torrent of fire scattering the remaining enemy forces, leaving a path clear yet treacherous for the team. Harris signaled the final push, the SEALs moving with lethal precision, clearing obstacles, suppressing threats, coordinating every micro-movement with the aircraft above. Sparks and debris fell from the structures around them, the ground shaking under the repeated passes of the A-10, yet inch by inch they pressed forward. The extraction Point was near just beyond a final stretch littered with wreckage and enemy positions. Harris timed every move with the strafing runs above covering the team as they sprinted the final meters through bullets, flying debris, collapsing metal, and the roar of engines. The team reached the extraction zone, securing their position while the helicopter hovered and landed amidst the chaos. The A-10 roared one last pass, engines screaming a deafening presence that forced the last pockets of enemy resistance to scatter and flee. Sparks flew, smoke billowed, yet the SEALs moved swiftly, loading the captured intelligence and supplies into the helicopter each second. Critical. Every heartbeat a drum of survival, every breath a measure of victory. Yet the danger was not fully past until they were safely airborne. Harris and his team boarded rapidly, the helicopter lifting into the sky, the valley below a twisted scar of destruction, chaos, and smoke. The A-10 followed for a final sweep engines, screaming, ensuring the team's escape and leaving behind the remnants of the enemy's attempt to hold the field. The general may have said it was over, yet the roar of engines, the chaos of battle, and the courage of those who refused to yield proved that even when hope seemed lost, survival and triumph were still possible. The helicopter rose above the valley, the SEALs battered, exhausted, yet alive, the A-10 banking one last time. Lieutenant Colonel Harris signaled the team to take positions around the ruined warehouse. Every movement calculated and silent, their rifles ready, their senses on high alert. Smoke and dust hung heavy in the air, the acrid scent of burning fuel, and scorched metal stinging their eyes and lungs. The A-10 roared overhead, engines screaming a thunderous presence that struck fear into the enemy below, yet also forced debris and rubble to cascade unpredictably around them. Harris counted heartbeats and measured seconds, timing the strafing runs above with their approach. The enemy had regrouped inside the structure, firing sporadically from shattered walls and makeshift barricades, bullets striking metal and concrete around the SEALs as they advanced low and fast, using the chaos above as cover. Every step required coordination, every glance communicated intent and action. The A-10 made another dive, releasing ordnance with surgical precision explosions, sending clouds of dust and twisted metal into the air, masking their movement, yet also threatening to collapse parts of the already unstable structure. Harris led the team around a crumbling wall, signaling them forward inch by inch, each movement measured against the trajectory of falling debris and enemy fire. The warehouse loomed larger ahead, jagged shadows casting illusions of movement. The windows shattered, the doors hanging off rusted hinges, yet every corner could conceal a hidden enemy combatant. The team paused briefly, behind cover, assessing angles, points of entry, and potential threats. The roar of the A-10 above engines, screaming as it circled and released fire, provided both chaos and cover. A relentless force that kept the enemy suppressed, yet reminded them that danger was everywhere. Sparks flew from stressed metal panels inside the warehouse sections, collapsing under the shock waves from the overhead attack. Forcing the SEALs to adjust their path quickly, Harris signaled for a coordinated push toward the nearest entrance, covering each movement with suppressive fire, their rifles echoing in the cavernous space. Smoke and dust obscured vision, forcing reliance on training and instinct. Every sound amplified, every shadow a potential threat. The co-pilot of the A-10 executed a strafing run across the far side of the structure, engines screaming a relentless symphony of destruction, sending enemy combatants scattering. Harris timed the push to coincide with the barrage moving forward as the enemy tried to recover from the sudden onslaught. Every step forward was a battle against both human and environmental hazards, collapsing beams, flying debris, and ricocheting bullets threatening to strike at any instant. The SEALs advanced cautiously, clearing each segment of the structure room by room, signaling silently and covering each other with precise, calculated fire. The A-10 swooped low again, engines screaming and guns firing, tearing through enemy cover and sending smoke and fire spiraling. Across the warehouse yard below, Harris adjusted positions using every fragment of debris as cover, moving closer to the command center of the building where critical communications equipment and supplies were presumed. The enemy tried to regroup, firing sporadically from shattered walls, but each attempt was met with suppressive fire from the team and relentless strafing above. The SEALs moved like shadows across the battlefield, coordinating movements with hand signals, glances, and gestures. Timing each advance with the A-10's destructive passes, sparks flew from stressed panels sections of wall, crumbling from both enemy fire and ordnance falling from above, debris raining down, forcing split-second adjustments and near misses. Each moment was a test of nerve, skill, and coordination. The team pressed onward inch by inch, room by room, clearing the structure with meticulous precision. Harris felt every heartbeat echo in his chest, each shudder of metal and wood. A reminder that any mistake could be fatal. The A-10 unleashed another devastating volley above engines, screaming the roar of destruction, shaking the valley, sending enemy combatants scattering and leaving twisted metal and smoke in its wake. Harris signaled a final coordinated push toward the core of the warehouse, knowing the intelligence and supplies they needed were just ahead. Every second, a battle against both the enemy and the treacherous environment. Sparks and smoke rose from stressed beams and panels, the smell of burnt fuel and metal thick in the air. Yet the SEALs moved forward, their training and determination pushing them relentlessly toward the objective. The general had said it was over, yet the roar above and the chaos below made it clear the battle was far from finished, and that survival would demand every ounce of skill, courage, and coordination the team possessed as they prepared to breach the enemy stronghold and claim victory. The SEALs paused at the threshold of the warehouse core, every sense on high alert, the acrid smell of smoke and burnt fuel filling their lungs and stinging their eyes. Lieutenant Colonel Harris signaled silently, the team splitting into cover positions ready to breach. The A-10 roared overhead, engines screaming a relentless presence that struck fear into the enemy and provided a chaotic shield for the team below. Every second stretched endlessly as the SEALs assessed angles, points of entry, and potential threats. Sparks flew from stressed panels above, and debris from the initial strikes rained down, forcing micro-adjustments to every movement. The enemy inside scrambled to recover from the strafing runs, bullets cutting through shattered walls and ricocheting off twisted metal, forcing the SEALs to move cautiously, yet with purpose. Each step was a calculated risk, every heartbeat a measure of tension. Harris led the team forward inch by inch, signaling covers and suppressive fire. The roar of the A-10 above was deafening engines, screaming in a relentless symphony of destruction and chaos, forcing enemy combatants into retreat while the SEALs advanced deeper into the heart of the warehouse. Smoke and dust obscured vision, forcing reliance on training instinct and acute awareness of sound and movement. Every shadow, every broken beam could conceal an ambush, yet they pressed forward with disciplined precision. Sparks leapt from stressed metal and broken structures, every vibration and tremor a reminder of the fragility of their surroundings and the ever-present threat of collapse. Harris signaled a coordinated push toward the central command area, known to house critical communications equipment and supplies. Each room cleared revealed more dangers, the enemy desperate, and cornered, launching sporadic attacks that were met with rapid and precise return fire coordinated with the A-10 above. The roar of engines and the thunder of cannons echoed like distant thunder, rattling the walls, sending clouds of smoke and debris into the air. The SEALs moved like shadows, each step calculated, each glance a communication of intent and action. They reached the central room, the presumed location of vital intelligence and supplies. Yet the enemy had fortified it with improvised barricades and snipers hiding among twisted metal and rubble. Harris assessed the room, calculating angles, trajectories, and timing, coordinating movements with both the team and the aircraft overhead. The A-10 swooped in low engines, screaming, releasing another devastating barrage, the shockwaves rattling walls and scattering enemy forces, yet debris fell dangerously close, forcing instantaneous adjustments. Harris signaled the team forward, each SEAL moving with lethal precision, clearing obstacles, suppressing threats, and advancing methodically. Inch by inch, sparks flew from stressed beams, the smell of smoke and burnt metal thick in the air, bullets ricocheting and shattering remnants of walls adding to the chaos. Each second was a battle against fatigue, fear, and unpredictable dangers as the team advanced toward the core. Every heartbeat a drum of adrenaline, every breath a measure of survival. The enemy attempted a last desperate ambush from hidden corners, yet coordinated. Fire from the SEALs and the relentless strafing of the A-10 above neutralized threats before they could fully form. Harris led the final push into the command area, securing the vital equipment and supplies, signaling the team to hold position as the roar of engines continued overhead. The structure creaked under stress debris, shifting and falling with every pass of the aircraft. Yet the team held fast, coordinating defensive positions and covering one another. Each movement was precise, deliberate, and executed under extreme pressure. Sparks and smoke curled faintly from stressed beams and panels, the acrid smell of burnt fuel and metal filling the air, the team navigating the chaos with practiced skill. The A-10 made another pass, engines screaming, unleashing a barrage that forced remaining enemy combatants into retreat. Sending clouds of dust and fire spiraling into the sky, Harris coordinated the extraction and consolidation of captured intelligence and supplies, ensuring every member of the team remained covered by fire and debris from the overhead aircraft. The general had said it was over, yet the roar above and the chaos below made it abundantly clear the battle was far from finished and that survival and success depended entirely on coordination, skill, and courage as the team prepared to move out of the warehouse into the uncertain terrain beyond. Every second a test of nerve and every heartbeat a measure of determination. The dawn broke over the desert valley, a thin red line stretching across the horizon as the SEALs prepared for insertion, the dust clinging to their gear and the silence heavy around them. Major Alexandra Hayes stood by her A-10 Thunderbolt the engines, humming softly as the desert wind swept across the airfield, the heat already rising like a warning. She had been told the mission parameters twice, once by the briefing officer and again by the general himself. The SEALs would move through a narrow canyon to extract an intelligence asset while her job was to provide cover fire from the air. But there was a catch. The canyon walls were too high for normal flight paths, and the SEALs had muttered that no pilot could fly that low, not with that much enemy presence and not with that kind of machine. The A-10 was built for ground attack, but not for threading through stone corridors barely wider than its wings. Hayes listened quietly, her gloved hand resting on the cold metal of her plane, every word echoing like a challenge waiting to be answered. And as the general gave his final nod, she caught the look from one of the SEALs, half grin, half doubt. That look stayed with her as she climbed into the cockpit. The engines thundered to life, the roar, breaking the stillness of the morning, her canopy reflecting the first sharp rays of light. The ground crew scattered back, giving her the thumbs up as the radio crackled in her ear, confirming the mission clock was live. The SEALs moved, out in their convoy below, heading toward the canyon while she taxied down the runway, pushing the throttle forward, the twin engines screaming as the A-10 leapt into the sky, the dust trailing behind like a comet tail. She could feel the vibration. Through her bones, the hum of the machine like a heartbeat that matched her own. She leveled off low, flying just above the sand, her eyes scanning the terrain ahead. Every ridge and dune burned into her memory from the maps she had studied all night. The radio was quiet except for short bursts of updates from ground command, but beneath that quiet she felt the pulse of anticipation, the weight of what was coming. The SEALs were moving through hostile territory, the enemy entrenched in the cliffs, above the canyon, and she was their only cover. She adjusted her altitude lower and lower each descent, bringing her closer to the jagged stone edges that reached for her wings. The first hint of contact came like a whisper, static breaking across. Her headset followed by the clipped voice of the SEAL team leader. Contact left 2:00. She banked hard to starboard, the G-force pressing against her chest as she descended further, the canyon opening like the jaws of a trap below her. The rocks blurred past her canopy so close she could almost touch them, the A-10's engines howling as she dropped into the valley floor. The enemy fire lit the cliffs in flashes of orange tracer rounds cutting through the air. She adjusted the throttle steady, her fingers dancing across the weapons panel, locking targets as her training took over. The world became motion and sound, the rattle of the GAU-8 cannon bursting to life, tearing through enemy emplacements like thunder rolling across the valley. Floor below. The SEALs moved under her shadow, their position illuminated by the explosions above the radio, alive with their clipped calls for movement and support. Her focus narrowed, the canyon tightening around her, each turn sharper than the last. The rock walls closing in like a fist, but she held steady, every reflex honed through years of flying. The heat shimmered across the cockpit glass. Sweat trickled down her temple as she pulled into another dive, the altimeter dropping so fast it felt like free fall. The radio screamed another call-out, multiple positions on the ridge. She responded with steel and fire, the cannon roaring again, the recoil shaking the aircraft, her vision blurring from the vibration, but she held her course, hugging. The canyon wall so close, the wingtips brushed the dust from the stone. The SEALs below moved in rhythm with her strikes, their path carved open by each burst of firepower. She could hear their leader over the comms shouting, "Move, move, move," his voice, raw but alive. The A-10 roared again, the echo bouncing off the cliffs as she climbed slightly to avoid a protruding ledge. The sky vanishing above, replaced by shadow and smoke. Then came the warning light blinking red on her console, a heat signature, spiking from the cliffs to her left. She twisted hard, banking with every ounce of strength, the missile streaking past her right wing, the explosion rattling the air around her. She caught her breath, the shockwave rocking the plane, the alarms screaming in her headset, but she steadied the stick and dropped lower again below the enemy's line of sight, dust and debris swirling in her wake. Her heart pounded, but her voice stayed calm over the radio. Target neutralized. Continue movement. The SEALs acknowledged their tone, quick-clipped all business. But beneath it, she could hear the disbelief, the realization that she was still there, still flying lower than anyone had thought possible. She guided the A-10 through another turn, the light dimming. As the canyon narrowed, her fuel running, lean, her systems running hot, but she pressed on the extraction point still miles ahead. The SEALs were moving fast, but the enemy was regrouping, setting up at the far end of the canyon where the walls curved sharply into an ambush. She could see it forming on her radar dots, blooming like a storm waiting to break. She had one pass left, one chance to clear the path before the SEALs walked into it. She exhaled once, steady and cold, her eyes fixed on the narrow curve of rock ahead as she dropped altitude once more, her engines roaring, the dust exploding beneath her wings. And as she pulled the trigger, unleashing another burst of fire into the canyon ahead, the world lit up in flame and fury, and the radio went silent, leaving only the echo of her engines and the waiting silence that followed. The air rippled with the shockwave from the last strike, dust and heat swirling through the canyon as Major Hayes steadied the stick, the A-10 groaning under. The strain of low-altitude maneuvers, her breathing sharp through the mask, her heart hammering against her ribs. Below her, the SEALs pushed forward, their dark figures moving like shadows through the smoke, their voices sharp bursts of sound across. The comms she could barely hear over the roar of her engines. The canyon twisted ahead, narrowing again, the walls high enough to block radar and light the path, a knife edge of stone and danger. She checked her instruments, the fuel gauge low, the warning lights flickering, but she ignored them because the team below still needed her, and they were far from clear. A voice cracked through the radio. "Harris, the SEAL leader, we are pinned at the bend. Hostiles above both sides. We cannot move Hayes." Banked hard, the G-force crushing her into the seat as the A-10 tilted sideways, scraping air so close to the rock that sparks flew from her wingtips. The targeting system locked. She fired again. The GAU-8 spitting fire and thunder, the vibration shaking every bolt in the cockpit. The rounds tore into the ridge, shredding the enemy positions above the SEALs as fragments of rock and steel rained down in an avalanche of noise and chaos. Harris shouted over the channel, "Target destroyed, moving now," but she could hear the urgency behind his voice, and she knew it was only getting worse. Smoke filled the canyon thicker now, visibility dropping to almost nothing. Hayes adjusted her altitude lower than safety allowed her instincts, taking control as she flew by, feel alone, reading the subtle shifts of air pressure, the rhythm of the canyon itself. The alarms blared in her headset, heat warning systems overload, but her focus stayed fixed on the radar where new signatures appeared at the far end of the valley, more enemy vehicles moving into position. They were trying to trap the SEALs inside, and she was the only thing standing in their way. She switched to the secondary weapon system, her thumb hovering over the release she lined up the run perfectly in her mind before diving again. The A-10 screamed through the narrow gap, the engines tearing at the air as she unleashed the payload explosions rolling across the canyon floor in waves of light and fury. Her vision blurred from the recoil, her body pressed hard against the seat. Yet she held the course steady until the last moment, pulling up barely in time to avoid a collision with the rising cliff. The radio erupted with voices, Harris shouting that they were clear, but she caught another tone beneath it. Something else, fear maybe, or disbelief that she had survived the run. The A-10 leveled out, low smoke curling around its wings like ghost trails as she circled back over the canyon, scanning for any sign of movement. Her fuel was dangerously low, systems flickering, warning after warning, the aircraft wounded from the stress. But she refused to climb out. She could not leave them yet. The SEALs had reached the extraction zone, but enemy reinforcements were closing fast, the radar lighting up again with new threats. She descended once more, despite every indicator screaming for her